is if you have any like little questions over the topic that you're dealing with right now, quiz-wise, would you like to ask any questions? I won't give you answers, but I'll at least give you some guidance. Go ahead. I try to, whenever dealing with a question where it says something is not the answer, I want, because otherwise somebody would just say helmet, and I want something more specific. Any others? All right. I'd like to be able to, I want enough information that if I wanted to go look up the standard, I'd have enough information to search off your answer, if that makes sense. So, yeah, you're going to have to call out the numbers associated with it. All right, anything else? Okay, so here's the topic for today, and this particular lesson's a big lesson. You got safety associated with it, and you've got a lot of different processes. So the key thing is to take your time, take some notes, understand some key principles. But let's talk about safety to start off with. In any fabrication, any mechanical, production, manufacturing, welding, whatever the process may be, you always have to have materials and stuff that are going to be involved with either potentially explosive situations, combustible situations, ventilation situations, all kinds of things. So, obviously you all fully understand that safety is important, right? We have to protect ourselves. For example, even if I'm just using a good old-fashioned hand grinder, here it is, it's got a spinning abrasive blade, and it's cutting metal essentially, or it's bracing off metal. I don't know if that's a word, but we're going to make it a word. So here's my question. What kind of safety gear should you have on just to deal with something like this? And by the way, this is the one thing you see in like movies all the time. They'll have random scenes where people are just grinding on stuff. You watch any like action movie, there's going to be some kind of garage where somebody's just grinding on something. They don't even have a clue what they're doing, but they're just grinding. So tell me, I'm going to go start grinding something. What do I need to have on? Safety glasses. So I got my eyes protected, and I got my glove on, or gloves.
You should have ear protection.
Absolutely.
And,
got my earplugs right there.
Actually, your type of clothing could come into play.
Why would your type of clothing? I'm just grinding. Can't I go out there in my cotton t-shirt and just grind away?
Well, you can.
Well, you can. Yeah.
You'll think, I need to do something else.
Burn right through the cotton, won't it, though?
Yeah.
I've done it plenty of times. I got plenty of burns on my arms, and even though it burns a very, very small amount, you can singe up a nice shirt pretty fast. So you might want to consider some jacket wear too. But some of the primaries are your glasses. How come do we typically ventilate when we deal with grinding? You should in some way. Now, do you have to have up close ventilation with it? Right. You don't actually have to be like right on top of it with some kind of ventilation sucking the air out. But typically the space that you're in will need to have some kind of exhaust fan moving that particulate out of the air. Because this thing is, essentially grinding off tiny little pieces of metal. And that stuff is in the air because it's so small. So you got to be aware of that. So they'll have some ventilation, although it's not like you're going to need a respirator or something in that case. Except in a certain condition, you might need to consider a respirator. And it has nothing to do with the grinding itself. It has to do with what you're dealing with, what you're grinding on. All right, so we understand safety is a big deal. Now, we also understand very specifically that there's more than our own common sense that factors into this. There is OSHA, which stands for Occupational Safety, what? Health Administration. Okay, so you all tell me, what does OSHA do? OSHA is over every field. It's not just fabrication. It can be safety standards on a loading dock. It can be safety standards actually on construction sites. Even just people going out and building buildings, there are OSHA standards. So OSHA sets out standards. They have inspectand they come and they look at essentially what you're doing. Now, why do they do this?
Safety in general.
Do it? You say? Yeah. Well, people make mistakes, right? We make mistakes, especially when money's involved. Because you look back in the days of like the early American, sort of booms, like the Hoover Dam, for example. A lot of people died in constructing the Hoover Dam for ventilation reasons, for falling off things. So we're starting to crack down on the motivation or the safety regulations that sort of work against motivations of making money. You have to keep that in mind. Now, they have standards. These standards are numbered with all kinds of components. These standards control like your safety ladders, climbing up and down, how many rings or how far spaced those ladders, rings are, to keep, like if you're climbing up a ladder, there you are climbing, in case you slip, what keeps you from falling all the way backwards and off? Ever seen those ladder rings, right? They stick out sort of like a cage. And, when you're up pretty high, you got to have those things. Those kind of standards factor into this all the time. Somebody has to make those things. Somebody actually has to have a manufacturing plant making them, and even they get OSHA standards. Handrails, guardrails, if you're on a working platform, now we don't keep them to the same level we do building code, but there's going to be some guardrails to protect you. All that stuff is important. They also establish what is the proper equipment and everything else. So, especially if you go into business for yourself and you have people working for you, you got to be aware of this stuff because crackdowns can easily happen, especially the larger your company gets. All right, so you've got your safety to be concerned with. Now, in any field, again, that doesn't relate to just one field. That is across the board. Anything that has people working, there's typically an OSHA standard for it. If I'm up on a roof, am I up on a tall roof? What's one of the requirements that a contractor has to have if they're out constructing buildings? What do they have to have people-wise, or what regarding the people you think OSHA controls? Here I am standing up on my tall roof with my hard hat on. I got my hard hat on, so we're good there. But I'm up here and I'm hammering stuff. There I am with my hammer. So, what am I doing up on this tall roof to protect myself? You got a safety harness so that you're strapped on to something. So if you go sliding, you can go off. Now, in some cases, they'll also require like maybe netting. Just depends on the situation. But roofing contractors especially, they have to make sure their workers are latched to something. A lot of dangers there. A lot of people fall off stuff. So, a lot of safety, big safety concerns. Now, obviously, your gear that you wear, particular process, welding, grinding, cutting, it may vary. But let's move on into some stuff that requires a little bit more protective equipment. For example, if I'm doing a good old-fashioned shielded metal arc welding, or I have to refer to as SMAW, or SMAW, but I like to call it SMAW. Anyway, I've got an explosion essentially happening right there, an arcing effect, right? When I'm welding two pieces of material, I'm having a small little exothermal reaction. And what kind of things should I be concerned with for myself personally? Here I am, here's my face, like right here, looking really close. There I am. So, I got eyes, so you got to worry about my eyes. I'm squinting a lot right now for obvious reasons. What else? Got to protect my eyes. Got to protect what I'm breathing in. What else?
Just the sparks and such.
Okay, so got to have and I'm dealing with hotter stuff, right? So I probably got to have some gloves on to protect my hands. Probably got to have some stuff covering up all my skin. Why do I need to cover my skin? What does that matter? Well, give me the specific reason.
Ultraviolet.
Yeah, you've got essentially radiation just pouring right at you from this reaction. So you've got to protect yourself from ultraviolet, infrared, all this radiation popping out at you. So you've got a helmet on, you've got clothing on, you've got glass in front of you so you can see through, and even that glass has to be special. So you've got all this stuff that you got to keep in mind with your safety equipment based on the process. Any questions on that? You want to ask? All right. So just a quick little overview on safety. There's standards for everything. When in doubt, go look up the standard. OSHA is the great place to start. And especially if you're in business, you've got to be aware of it, because if something goes wrong, what happens? You get sued. That is just the nature of the game. Somebody's going to sue you, and if you go into the court and they say, well, did you keep up with your OSHA standards? And you said no, guess what happens? You lose. And you get fired if you're in the company and something goes wrong and you ignore the standards. Now, here's the other side of it though. Let's say you did adhere to the standards. Let's say that you actually had the protection equipment on and something still goes wrong. The law is on your side. Doesn't necessarily mean you're protected. It just means the law is on your side. And that works out definitely much better. So anyway, let's move on.